Hi guys, it's Alyssa Levine, and I did my film analysis project on the film 42. It was a film that shared Jackie Robinson's life as the first Black MLB player and his experience with racism and resistance in doing so. A little bit of an introduction. I focused on the theory by Du Bois, his theory of double consciousness. A little bit about, I know we talked about him in class, but we learned that he's a moral theorizer, and he was more of a rapid, he wanted more of a rapid change in society, so he actually denounced his US citizenship and moved. I believe it was to Guam because he really, really believed in equal rights and throughout his lifetime. The film 42 is a nonfiction documentary. It shares the story, the life of Jackie Robinson, and what he went through just to be able to play baseball in the 1940s. 1947 specifically was when he was able to play his first game. The idea of double consciousness, as we learned before, focuses on this idea that you have a broken identity, and kind of depending upon the environment that you're in, you're able to see yourself as different characters almost. So when watching the film, kind of observed the attitudes and behaviors that Jackie had in different environments, and some of the ones that I thought of were he saw himself as a Black Major League Baseball player, and I think that's important because he did act different when he was seen and thought of himself as a Black MLB player. And those scenes where he is on the mound and other coaches from other teams were yelling horrific things at him that were racist and just cruel. He specifically saw himself differently than when he was able to just play ball, and he was able to see himself additionally as nothing but a ball player, just a great baseball player, a lover of the game, which there's a few scenes, not very many, in the film that share what that looks like. You can see as he's, hitting his home runs or when he's on a base, and he genuinely just loves. And I think the music that they put to those scenes really, really share that he is just a baseball player. Like, that's all he's trying to do is play baseball. And additionally, a lot of fans or members of the Black community saw him as an inspiration. He was seen as a hero. And I think that's a different type of attitude that he had to have throughout the film. It's a different identity, you could almost categorize it at. He was changing the status quo and changing how people normally viewed people of color. And kind of related to the nothing but a ball player, he was also able to see himself as just a father and a husband and just a human being. I feel like it's another way to as he viewed himself. As Du Bois taught the idea of double consciousness, it's easy to see throughout the film by observing how Jackie Robinson is treated and how he responds to how he's treated, how he's told to respond, and how society views people of color in the 1940s. That would be my thesis statement, I guess, of this film analysis. Just a little summary of the film. It was directed by Brian Helgeland. It was aired in 2013. I believe they started filming in 2010, 2011. Jackie Robinson was the first Black man to play in Major League Baseball. He dealt with a lot of horrible things in his lifetime. He dealt with biased umpires, aggravated fans. He was name called during games, after games, all the time. He was getting those pitches that he even got hit a few times because you could tell pitchers just didn't want to deal with it, so they just threw him balls or tried to injure him. He also, when he would stay with the team at different games, he was denied from staying in hotels, so he had to stay in separate hostels of people's homes. Branch Rickey was the manager of the Dodgers at the time. He's the one who signed Robinson, and he had an experience earlier in his life that was shared in the film about how he didn't stand up for racism, and it really bugged him. And so he was able to. This was another opportunity for him to make himself a better person, he said. And so he went out and he wanted to do everything different than the rest of MLB was doing. He wanted Jackie to represent himself as a gentleman as well as a great baseball player. He wanted him not to fight back, and that was seen a lot of tension throughout the film, kind of in the identity of how he saw himself as a black MLB player, because he had to control that anger on the field, just more so than a white person would at the time. And it was actually a really hard film to watch in some parts because of how he was treated. I could never imagine talking to somebody or thinking about somebody like that. It's really sad. It was actually reminded me of when we watched the film Remember the Titans. The theme of change was seen throughout the film. He was changing through sacrifice and resistance and through his relationships. I proposed a few questions to myself in analyzing this project. What was happening in the broader context of society at the time? Well, this was post-World War II atmosphere. It was right when everybody was kind of living on edge, and there was activism going on, but not really from a large amount of the community, mostly from the African American community. Most laws were not yet set in stone. The one that kind of came about after the era of Jackie Robinson first started playing baseball, about 5 years after, I think it was 1954, Brown versus Board, saying that it was unlawful, it was illegal to have segregation in schools, and it ended that era of the separate but equal. But we didn't really see anything happening until years later, about the 1960s. And so I proposed, how did this event impact life today? And even today we celebrate Robinson Day, which is a day in April where all sports teams on a specific day all teams within the MLB play. They wear the jersey number 42 to share in his honor of what he went through, of what this sport went through to be able to be interracial. And his number is actually the only retired number from the whole MLB, which is really interesting. And like I mentioned, this was a post-World War II era, which kind of developed the setting for the film and some of the things that came about as segregation started to get more disbanded. We had President Truman. President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act saying that we have to be treated as equal. It kind of denounced all the Jim Crow laws. We have the Voting Act saying you can't be discriminatory in voting. Fair Housing Act, it's illegal to not let certain colors of skin not purchase housing or property. And so we see more of the changes aspect come within more of the later dates, but this was a start. That Jackie Robinson started what I think is a movement, and it was really incredible because look at where we are today. And in regards to the theme of the film, I felt that a lot of films we watch that are on race or segregation, they have a lot of different themes going on, but this film does a really great job of just focusing on the fact that it's the color of his skin, because Branch Rickey chose Jackie Robinson because he was a great baseball player, and he was African American. But first and foremost, he was the best ball player on the Dodgers at that time once he was signed. And he didn't really have anything else to face. He had a family. He had a great family. He had a beautiful wife, son. He had great friends, great education, and he couldn't do what he loved, which was play baseball, because of the color of his skin. And I really liked how direct the theme was, the focus of the film was, because he started a revolution. He was the first one, and now if we look at all of our famous sports, the baseball, football, basketball, we have many ball players that are black, that are white, that are of Hispanic nature. We're all diverse. It's not a thing anymore to be segregated. It doesn't look like that. And he started that, and he would be so proud of where we are today because of what he had to go through. Because what he did go through was horrific, and it was so sad and not okay, especially as a human being. There's no reason that he needed to be treated the way he was. But we started seeing many things come because of this, because it was one of the first things that Branch Rickey did that really went against all of social norms. We started having interracial marriages. People were allowed to vote. Education was seen as equal. And we don't see that today. We don't see any segregation in terms of colored bathrooms, colored places to sit. That's just not, we've gotten over that and past that. And I think there's other focuses in the Black community that they really try to focus on. But in regards to where we have been and where we are, it's incredible. It really is. And lastly, I kind of wanted to focus on the analysis of the broader context of what actually was going on in this time. And we saw through the film name calling. He was stared at. He was physically attacked, psychologically attacked by making them feel like he was inferior and he was worthless. And he questioned himself. Parts of the film we can see. Additionally, the way the law was set up and the law enforcement was set up, they were racist as well, and they didn't treat them at all fairly. Even children, we saw children screaming the N-word at Jackie as he's at bat, and then he hit a home run, and the kid was silent, and the crowd was silent, and it reminded me when I was deciding what film to choose for this project. I was looking at Help as a great movie as well, to show how blacks were treated as slaves, and this era of this film shows how new it was for people of color to be seen as equal. It wasn't the norm at all, and it was very rare. And there was this overrepresentation of the negative connotation of what people of color really were during this post-World War II society. And it really messed with people's minds and reminded me of the present media and how they have such a huge effect in today's society. Overall, in conclusion, I really chose this film because of what is going on presently in today's time. I think it's important. I think the idea of double consciousness is relevant in today's time. I think the complex racial norms have tremendously changed since the 1940s. However, we still see racism today, and that is so important that we focus in on that and we continue to make everything better for people of any skin color. And I want to thank you guys for watching this presentation. I think it was really fun to make and really hard to technologically figure out, but I enjoyed and I learned so much. Here is my references slide, and thank you guys again, and I appreciate you watching.